we go. Welcome everybody to our AIM Learn Fast webinar for the day. This is video number 87 since we started doing these back in March of 2020, and looking forward to chatting about the MyChron 5 karting product here today with our good friend Cory Terrell from our Roanoke office, AIM technician. Cory's going to come in here and chat with us a little bit about the MyChron 5. He works with it virtually every day, and we're gonna chat about some of the differences and some of the stuff that's available to you, from your MyChron 5 products. It's a staple in karting, and we just continue to raise the bar and create this product that just continues to really serve that industry well. So the MyChron 5 is also it is now sharing a ton of information, or a ton of our hardware and processes that all of the automotive products share as well. So there's it's not just its own little standalone karting product. It's really integrated and quite similar. So let's go ahead and get started and slide up to the next slide and introduce Cory. Cory's been an AIM Sports technician since June of 19. Like I said, in our Roanoke office. I enjoyed when I saw his note here that says his first day on the job was at a kart race. They didn't even have him show up at the building. They jump in the car, let's head down to GoPro Motorplex in North Carolina. Yep, so it's
5 in the morning.
Yeah, 5 in the morning. Yeah. AIM told me when I started this job that it was a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday job. Did they tell you that too, Cory? I don't know.
They did not.
Okay. I joke. Cory is also does a ton of karting stuff, but is also currently focused on supporting the Mazda Global MX-5 series, and that a pretty darn cool series where there's AIM devices in all of the cars. So this is his first time hosting one of our, co-hosting one of our AIM Sports webinars. So welcome, Cory. I appreciate you being here. We're looking forward to having a good time with you. Is there any other things you can kind of share with us a little bit about you before we get going?
No, just want to thank everybody for coming in, and looking forward to talking about some MyChron 5s 2Ts and MyChron 5s.
Perfect. I have actually had this question a number of times from folks that have chatted with me, and they have wondered who this fine-looking guy was here in this image that I've used. We've used at the end of our webinars all the time. We've had that picture in there. So now you know who is the man behind the hat and the glasses. So
that would be me while I was still going to the gym.
there you go. There you go. Okay, perfect. Let's jump in and start off with a history of the MyChron. I thought it'd be kind of cool to look back, and I had to go search around and do a few pictures. I found the old original MyChron 1. What we call now MyChron Classic is kind of the term that a lot of people use for it. But when it first came out, it was just called the MyChron. And this was the first MyChron that I ever purchased when I first started and first down this data road that I have taken. My son was racing karts, and we had a Digitron on a used kart that we had purchased. And I wanted when I saw the ads for this and saw one at the local kart shop, I thought, boy, this is just exactly what I'm kind of after, right? So purchased one of these and stuck it on the kart, had a great time with it. It worked well, and everything was really good. And then just a couple years later, the MyChron 2 came out, and wow, that's a huge jump, a huge leap, right? We had some warning lights that we could work with, temperature warning lights, shift lights, four places to have some information rather than just the 2 that were on there. And the other thing that was kind of interesting, we're not going to dig deep into it here, but I think we did in last week's webinar a little bit. You could download the MyChron 2 and put it onto what was then the Race Studio software, right? The original Race Studio 1, and you'd take this little optical light pin and you'd put it over this far right light bulb that was there, and it would send it out, and through a serial connection to your computer, you would maybe sometimes it took a try or two, but I was pretty good at it and I got pretty lucky with it. But you could get the data out of it and have RPM speed, a lot of the same stuff we're talking about here today. And that was probably back in 99 or so that the Micron 2 came out. I think it was about 2002. They stepped up and created the Micron 3, and that was a a pretty big step up. I mean, you can just look at the difference between the two. Much bigger screen, and and a bunch of other stuff, plus a normal USB download cable, right? And that was a big deal at the time, and these were very, very popular. They would run and run and run, and I still go to the track. I'll go to a kart race here local or something, and I'll still see Micron 3s out there. So still out there running and doing pretty well. Then the Micron 4. Micron 4 was another huge step in the way that it worked, and technology, and using different tools and methods. And it had a 9-volt in the back, and memory key was how we downloaded it, and pretty cool tool. That actually ran for quite a few years. That was the standard. And of course, they made the 1 temperature and the 2 temperatures, and you could add expansions and some other things to that. It was really a strong product, and again, we still see a ton of those when you go to the local kart track. You'll see a bunch of those still out there. And then the Micron 5. Cory, when you started working, what was with AIM back when you started? What was were you working with Micron 4s and 3s at the time?
I still see them, but the 5 was the most current product when I came into the office.
Yeah, shows the ages me a little bit, I'm afraid.
Just a little bit.
But the Micron 5 then came out, and it's been around a while, and that was even an even bigger step. The GPS was built into it. The Wi-Fi ability to download your data with Wi-Fi. The LEDs were much more adjustable and changeable for you. Custom screens and all the stuff that we now a lot of you that are watching this know about was in the Micron 5. And then just recently we came out with the Micron 5s. It's from the outside, and this is why we really wanted to have this discussion and make sure everybody was kind of up to speed with what's going on. All of a sudden they were looking in online, or they were at their local kart shop, and then all of a sudden there was a Micron 5s, and so we've got a lot of questions of what is this? What is the difference? What can we expect is coming? So the Micron 5s has just been released, in the last month or two, and what we really want to do is talk about that difference. So that's where we're going to go with where we're going to go. Okay, we're going to just kind of go through some slides that talk about what is the difference with the Micron 5 and the Micron 5s. Cory's going to kind of take over here and just chat a little bit. If you have any questions about stuff we're going to talk about, let us know, and we'll feed those in as well. So Cory, what internal makeover? What do you mean by that? The box on the outside looks virtually the same, minus a little bit of a different screen print on the lower part.
Yep, same buttons, same amount of shift lights, same amount of alarms, but from someone who takes these guys apart very regularly, let me assure you that the insides do not look the same at all. Brand new boards, brand new GPS boards, brand new RPM boards, just nothing similar as far as the insides go for these Micron 5s.
Interesting. There's such a huge difference on the inside. So the if we go to the next slide, another big piece of that change was adding that GPS 09 receiver.
Yep. So the original Micron 5, coming in at 10 hertz a second, which is sampling GPS at 10 times a second. We've upped that up to 25 times a second with our 25 hertz sampling frequency. That's 2.5 times better GPS. Can't go wrong with that.
And what the aim, what internally, the Micron 5, and then of course the software downstream a little bit farther, is working with those data samples coming in, and we're doing math on them, right? So that change from 10 hertz to 25 is not just kind of a cool, we just turned up the rate a little bit, right? There was some inherent issues behind that, as I understand things, not necessarily from our engineers, but just from my background in GPS things in the background in my past, is boy, you start stepping up that sampling rate. You gather more, you're gathering also more noise and more bad information too, right?
Mhm.
And you can actually create data that's not as good by oversampling. I know that you run into that sometimes with the MyChron 5s. We give the folks an option to gather RPM at 20 hertz or 50 hertz. When you
Yep.
do that, what do you see as far as differences?
Uh, Definitely a lot noisier RPM lines on your graph. So
Yeah.
not smooth. You don't get your clean peaks and valleys. You get a lot of jagged edges on that graph.
And while it's why we bump up that rate, yeah, you're actually gathering what's actually happening, but sometimes it's so much information that it brings in some false information as far as the way you might view it. The same thing was happening with the GPS. So this issue of jumping from 10 to 25 hertz is just not a matter of changing the firmware and bumping in a different GPS sensor. There was a lot of work behind the scenes to make it
Yeah. Oh yeah.
do what you're going to see here in a minute as we show you some different results from the GPS sensor. So, okay. Acquisition time, another part of that of a bump up in performance of the MyChron 5 is that is tied to that GPS sensor is how quickly you acquire the acquisition time.
And
What do
I
you
I see it all the time. I'll be looking at somebody's data in their first couple of laps. Satellites has been brought all the way in completely. So they've kind of got some screwy GPS data to start off, and you see it smooth out as the laps progress and the more time spent on the track. But those first couple of laps, every now and then, definitely not all of the time, but I do see it where it is still collecting those satellites while it's out on the track.
Yeah, and there is that difference between a hot start and a cold start with GPS
Mhm.
devices across the board,
Yep.
not just us, but all of them. That first time you start it, and internally, I'm sure they write their programming in different ways, but you need to download the data that tells them where the satellites are approximately, and that first startup on a weekend may take a little bit of time. So if you show up with any of your AIM devices that have a GPS sensor, it's better with a MyChron 5s, but that first time you get there, push the cart out of the trailer, put it under your tent or whatever, and just start the MyChron up, and just let it give it that minute or two for that very first startup of the weekend. After that, you can pretty much just start it up, and within that 10 or 15 seconds, you're off and running.
Yep.
The
It
MyChron
does remember
5s
that.
now it's five, or it's half, right? Even more.
And it does
So.
remember that GPS position, and it does find it much more quickly your second, third, fourth time out.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. That cold start, that first one of the day, definitely
Perfect.
see some satellite lag from a cold start.
But the MyChron 5 being even quite a bit better than the MyChron 5 was, and it was better than the MyChron 4, and and on and on. Yep. So it's just another improvement. So GPS positional accuracy. This is a big piece of what we're talking about, and we're going to show some examples of today.
Yeah. I mean, if you like seeing your GPS trace, overlaid on a Google Earth map, this is a huge deal. We were at 1.5 meters, which is close to five-ish feet. We're at 0.5 meters and better. Actually, some of the data that we show you here today is going to be even better than that 0.5 meters, which is about 1 to 2 feet, I think, for a half meter.
Yeah. And we're not talking about data that we've hand-picked, cherry-picked. When Cory and I were talking about doing this, Cory happened to go to a large Kart national event last weekend, and I said, hey, just grab some MyChron 5 and some MyChron 5s data if you can from the track on the same time. See if you can find some users that did that. He had some folks gave him some data. That's what we're looking at. We didn't go look for anything that was special. We used what was actually created last weekend.
These were the first 2 units I found.
There you go. So right out of the box. So the other thing I would like to mention real quickly is GPS positional accuracy as a term. The people get a little confused with this, and I always like to have this this 1 minute little piece on what is accuracy when it comes to these devices, and how should you think about it. The GPS positional accuracy is every 25 times a second now with the MyChron 5s, or 10 times per second with the MyChron 5s or MyChron 4s, the older GPS sensors. That is a standalone data point as far as this value that we're talking about here, GPS positional accuracy. What happens is every time we do it, we're looking at the number of satellites, where they are in the sky, so all the all the geometric strength of the math and all that to come up with a data point that we are telling you is within 0.5 on this example that we're here. We're going to see some real examples in a minute. That it's within this 0.5 meters of a circle to being accurate on the face of the Earth as a standalone single data point. Okay, and that is not to say that the very next one could be on the other side of that positional accuracy circle, right? So what happens is you've got positional accuracy and you've got relative accuracy. We can only really give you a number of this positional accuracy thing because it's kind of an industry standard as far as GPS accuracy statements are. But don't worry that it's a 0.5 of a meter. In fact, that's pretty darn good. But there are errors that are creating that, from 0 up to that 0.5 meter. And those same errors are on the very next data point and the very next data point and the very next one, right? So what happens is by the time we start stringing these together, even though we might have a 0.2 meter positional accuracy, the relative accuracy, from one point to the next, the one behind it and the one ahead of it, is going to be tiny because we are able to, with the equations, to get rid of all of the errors. The same errors on every point, right? Generally speaking. And so what we do is now all of a sudden you get your GPS information you're looking at in your data, and you see this speed trace or this loop around the corner. And while the whole thing might have a little bit of a shift to it depending on the positional accuracy, but all the data points in a row compared to themselves are very, very, very accurate. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in some pictures and some data in a minute, but that positional accuracy versus relative accuracy, relative being what's important to us as racers using this data, versus positional accuracy, which is a uniform standard of giving you an idea of how closely accurate this stuff is to that location on the face of the Earth. So just a quick talk about the GPS accuracy, and not to get too scared about that number. You might think of that number and go, well, that's pretty big, but in reality, that's pretty darn good. Processor speeds on the new MyChron 5s.
Yeah. So they are operating at twice the speed of the previous MyChron 5. It is the same processor that we have added to a lot of our automotive gauges, which will make room for a lot of after the fact math channels, a lot of good features to come in the future. Yeah.
Processor speeds, modern electronics, right? Every time you went to back when I bought this computer, right, you buy the best of everything. It costs X number of dollars, and then I go look about a year later, and it's 20% less and on price and 20% more on processor speed, right? So same thing happens in our electronics here. So it's part of the game, and not only that processing speed comes at expanded RAM memory, right?
Of course, and that is not to be confused with, kind of a hard memory where you would store data and things like that. This is going to be your RAM memory, which is going to allow the Italian manufacturers to put more features onto this MyChron 5s, which is one of the issues they were seeing with the MyChron 5 was, there was a lot of ways they wanted to move forward, but they did not have the processing power and they did not have the RAM memory left over to do so.
Pretty cool that AIM has always done this. They've always taken their always made available for all users any software and firmware updates, right? So if you've purchased the product, you are going to get all the firmware updates for that product as long as they are continuing to improve them. So there are some what mentions here, more features in the future. There's some things that they're working on, and that when those are worked out and are been tested and are working well, you're just going to get a firmware update and they're going to be added to your MyChron 5s. So or for those of you that are racing in the with cars and MXL MXS 1.2s or whatever, if they come up with something, you just do a firmware update. That's to get all of those additional benefits. So make sure you keep the those firmware and software updates up to date, especially beginning of the year. Okay, let's talk about download speeds difference.
Yep. So with that processor and with that more RAM memory, obviously we are able to download a little bit more quickly, excuse me. It already is downloading faster than the Micron 5 was, but I believe there are more updates to come in the future that will elevate that download speed, which is going to be very helpful. Not so much for, the guys running with one card, one Micron 5 unit, but, you might be in charge of, several or 10, 15, 20 of them. And if you need to download data for all of them, it's going to be much quicker. It gives you more time to make the changes that you need, more time to look at the data and, help coach your guys.
Last week we had a webinar where we had Emiliano from Italy and Jeff Wasilko join us, and we talked about Wi-Fi information, Wi-Fi networking, different ways to connect. And one part of the things that we did talk about there was the new chip that is being placed in. So the guys in the chat, maybe they'll put a link to that video. If all the links that we've talked about here live while we're recording this, if you're watching this later on YouTube, there'll be everything we have been chatting about, including this presentation, will be linked in the description box below. So keep that in mind. That discussion last week about Wi-Fi and some of the different things that are happening and the different types of chips we're working with, it was pretty interesting. And that is, of course, a part of the Micron 5s. Okay. More reliable and precise.
Yep. So all these features I just mentioned, combined with the up and coming power of the Race Studio 3 analysis, are going to be great. There's not much that you're going to miss on the track, especially with the ability to view your graphs, your videos, whatever you think you need to see will be on the Race Studio 3 analysis.
Race Studio 3 analysis, something we've talked quite a bit about here. There are on our YouTube site, we've had I think 7 webinars that are talking about the beta version that is out there and available, being updated behind the scenes as fast and as often as they can. And we've got it up to some working versions. We have some folks that are working with it quite a bit. Even a couple of folks that are here on the webinars, maybe it is their go-to to begin with at the track. Maybe they download their data right into it to begin with. I caution you on that. It is beta software and it's not as full featured as Race Studio 2 yet on some of the different options that you might want to look at your data with, but there is it is in a working form that is certainly good enough to take a look at your data. The most powerful tool being, if you have a SmartyCam video and being able to link those two together and look at things. So we're going to show a couple of images here on the next couple of slides. What this kind of looks like, what that difference is. So the first one, I'll chat about it for a little bit. This is some data that, as we mentioned just a minute ago, that Tyler was able to grab from this last weekend's event in Florida, a karting event. And I know it's kind of hard to see. I should have made the dots a little bit bigger or the background a different color or something. But this is 2 tests. One of them is a Micron 5. You can see over here on the left edge. You can see one of them, the red one, is a Micron 5 2T. 2 temperature model, and the one that is blue is the Micron 5s 2T. And this is akin the same if you were to have for the auto guys out there that aren't racing the Micron 5s, you got an MXS 1.2 with a GPS 08 receiver, and you switched to the GPS 09. This is the kind of stuff that you'll see in the corners of the data points, right? In Race Studio 3, we have the option to take away the line work where we've connected the dots for you and just show the dots, right? And which is kind of a cool thing. So now I can look at this data and I can see the red ones here are the older GPS sensor, which is every 10th of a second, we're making a dot. We're gathering that data, doing all the math, and then storing it to your Micron 5. And you can see the gap between those. It's still very good, still works pretty darn well, obviously. But then the blue one is the new Micron 5s, where you're getting these data points at 25 samples per second, 25 hertz. And you've got so many more dots that are out here, which gives the data logger more information to do their work with and compare against. It gives Race Studio 3 even more information to be able to do what it does internally and come up with some pretty cool answers. And you can see the difference in line between these two drivers, pretty clearly on on the graph that's built right into your Race Studio 3 software. And kind of an interesting point right here, GPS lateral G's of this corner is going this direction. And you can see that the blue dot and the red dot are pretty close here. The red came in and got to the apex really pretty early in the corner and is allowing it to open up and go right past where the blue one is maybe tightening it up a little bit. But you can see the red one went kind of straight for a little bit here, and then he tightens it up again. And you can see, boy, the releases, the red one is pretty strongly releases the G's and had to add a bunch, right ahead of where the cursor is. So right about in here, had to turn again pretty sharp. Seems to have worked, decently well on the speed trace, but you can kind of see the line and how it goes around the corner. You can see it even better in the blue dots, exactly where that driver had spent the time and was progressing down the track. Pretty big difference in the number of data points that are available to you. Worthwhile. These same data points that we can look at here graphically on the imagery in the background, you can do the same thing in your time distance graphs. We by default show you them as lines, just like you're used to in Race Studio 2 and have for years used. But if we went in there and right clicked on the settings, went into the settings box, you can actually take and make the dots here instead of the lines, and you can actually see where these lines have been drawn because of the dots, right? You can actually see more of the raw data if you want to go in and see the dots as well. And more dots is allowing us to model the GPS speeds and lateral accelerations of GPS based information much better. So very, very cool that the MyChron 5s and much of your devices, you now can get the GPS 09. Here's just another report, not exactly comparing the MyChron 5 to the MyChron 5s, but just the Race Studio 3 software that if you haven't used it, in the beta version is out there and available to you. Here's a split time report. One of the new features that I kind of at first I thought it was like, okay, well, that's kind of cool, whatever. The more I've used it, the more I like it. We can colorize your split times, where red is slower, green is faster, and you can then start to visually get a really quick idea and see exactly how boy, down here on only the third and maybe into the fourth lap, the cart was pretty darn quick, right? So because it had pretty much turned green that second lap, the tire's still coming up to speed, mostly green, and then pretty standard green across all of the corners. Pretty cool. This whole right area with a little preview window of, I've clicked on the I think the 11th segment here, the one just before the front straightaway, and you get basically channel traces of exactly what happened, distance versus speed. You can change that channel, and you can then highlight over each one of these and see that particular section, just like you were looking at it in your time distance graph, but only that segment, depending on which segment you select. Other graphs here too, if you want to. You can turn them off if you want to up here, but you can see time versus the lap numbers. You can see how much time you spent in that segment, and that it went up on lap 8 and came back down, but you can see how it got better and probably really got up to speed by lap 6. Looks like pretty good. You can also look at distance you traveled versus the lap. How many feet of distance did you travel to get these 34 seconds? You can see the number of feet. I'm sorry, down here, the number of feet. And when you went less feet was actually the best lap time, right? You can start to see correlations and help you with your analysis. And of course, down here, the time spent versus the distance. You can really start to kind of really quickly with these little shortcuts find some things. Race Studio 3 analysis, kind of a really a good tie to the new products. And then the last one I just wanted to show just really quickly was just some different ways of looking at the data. This happens to be a GSUM plot based with the measures graphs down below, a map to know exactly where you are. And you can see here that we've got a spot where he hit a lot of G forces laterally, 2.36 left-hand turn G forces all of a sudden. You can put the cursor right there, figure out exactly where that was and why did we hit that many G's right there, right? Pretty all tied together. You can colorize with a third color. I think I did it here with our RPM. typically maybe it's throttle position, but you can see exactly how the driver is kind of moving that cart around and using the G-forces that are available to him. Just another quick way of looking at the data in Race Studio 3. Just kind of wanted to go through some of it, and with that additional GPS sensor data, pretty cool that you can see the stuff even more accurately. So the other thing I wanted to go through that after kind of looking at the software a little bit, I want to look at the questions, make sure. Was the track map already installed or did it have to be created? It was a question by Bruce. And we're talking about down here on all of them. I think I had a track map included on all of the slides I used, right? The track map is just generated as you go. It's based on GPS coordinates, right? And then there is some kind of interesting ways that they're using the track segments based on what the tracks that are in the track map database, and we can save those. If you wanted to change them, the track map segments can be tweaked and saved and moved around on the cloud, and use them on multiple different computers that you have, or save them and share them with other people. The other kind of cool thing about these segments, and I didn't do it here, I just left them as numbers, but you can go in and adjust these just by hovering over that split, adjust the segments on the fly, and they're adjusting all of your functionality for that test, and then save for later. And corner 2 might be oak tree corner, right? And so it's not just corner 2 anymore, but you can give that not a number of value, or a alpha character a name, right? So you can name your corners or continue to give those numbers. So, and straightaways too. So another kind of a cool thing. So the maps are work a little bit different in Race Studio 3 than they do 2. A little bit of a learning curve there to kind of get the hang of it, but I think everybody's going to really like it in the end. Okay, we'll bring Cory back in to talk about, there are some changes in the MyChron 5 menu structure, and some of the different things that especially under the system settings. We got a picture here to kind of talk about a little bit what's different in there, Cory.
So the main thing is going to be the temperature setup. That is going to allow you to actually designate and call out which temperature leads you're using. This will be extremely helpful for guys using a MyChron 5 2T paired with a MyChron expansion, because you could have potentially up to 3 temperatures with that, and you do want to be able to help the MyChron out, tell it what temps are what, and instead of leaving it up to the MyChron 5 to use its math channels to figure out which temps are being used, you get to set them yourself.
Pretty impressive fix. One of the things that some of the folks that have used the MyChron 5 above maybe just the standard level, if not a little bit more, is it wasn't quite as user definable on some things like that, right? You'd plug it in, it would often know that it was a water temperature or an EGT or something, but being able to go in there and just define things is going to be pretty handy for a lot of folks.
Well, it does really well with the EGTs versus water temp, because
exactly.
one being thermocouple, one being thermoresistive.
Exactly.
But when telling CHTs and EGTs apart, I believe the MyChron 5, if left on automatic and you did not want to designate, it would not be able to 100% determine until you reached a certain temperature threshold. Because your EGTs are going to run much hotter than your CHTs, your cylinder head temps are. So once you reach that temperature high enough for the MyChron to say, hey, there's no way this is a CHT, this is definitely an EGT, and this is what we're going to label it now.
And even maybe a more obscure way of that somebody may run into is maybe you have an oil temp and a water temp. They're both exactly the same sensor and they're not that far apart. Sure is nice that for you to be able to go in and label them and select them. So nice little fix that they've provided for us. Appreciate it. The menus are, some of these other icons, there are some changes in the MyChron5s menus as well.
Yep, date and time. You can set it manually if you like, or the easy way, you can set it for GPS date time sync, which is whenever you get to a track, if it is recognized by the MyChron 5s, then it will put in that correct time for you, which is really good if you're, it's 2 years down the road, you want to see your old data from Ocala, you're heading back there for the first time in a while. You want to be able to see those times and those dates, correctly for, finding your data and, determining, what type of day this data was put down. Was it a cold morning or was it a hot afternoon? So very important to have those date and times correct.
And that option is in all of our different devices now. And but one of the things behind the scenes that is important for you to do to make that work as well as it should is for you to go into Race Studio 3 and allow the track database to update itself. The folks in Italy have worked hard, and all of the different tracks that are in there, the 2,500 or whatever number of tracks there are worldwide in that database, have all been updated with um, their zone, their time zone, right? So it knows exactly what time it is there at that particular geodetic location. And if you have old maps that you've loaded onto your MyChron 5 for 3 years ago, what might be a good idea in order to use some of these features in the best way is to go in there, get rid of the older maps, and then download the tracks that you're going to visit from the track database. It will help that function work even better.
And I did go check this morning. Took a brand new, or actually no, it was an older MyChron 5, and I was able to put all 4,521 tracks on there. So if you want them all, you can have them all, but definitely recommend fine tuning your track selection.
A lot of memory there, obviously. So pretty good. And then counters. We've got some counters.
Counters, yep. That one, the one at the top you'll see is going to be the lifetime of the unit. So that one will always be increasing. Users 1, 2, 3, and 4 can always be reset. Maybe you got a new Kart, this MyChron 5's going on. You don't want it to display, 20 miles on there because you got a fresh engine, you got a fresh chassis, whatever it may be. You want to reset the MyChron that way. The Kart's fresh, and you can monitor, how fresh it is.
Yeah, a lot of people will have a couple of different engines, and they'll have them named, right? So they'll have this is engine 1, 2, and 3, and when they take them off, maybe they turn on that counter, so they get a better idea of the mileage or the time that engine has been run. Kind of a handy tool. Wi-Fi has a little bit some different settings in it now.
Wi-Fi, the main one to look at there is the reset CFG. I see some guys at the track sometimes having issues connecting or downloading their data. 80-90% of the time you go in there, reset that config, and you're back in action downloading your data. I couldn't give you a very good answer as to why, but it gets a little buggy after use for prolonged periods.
Robbie says in the chat, did you turn it off and turn it back on again? Which is basically what the Wi-Fi reset config does, right? Even though you turn your MyChron off and turn it back on, that Wi-Fi chip that's on there is acting like an access point, right? It's acting like a router, just like at your house, and it doesn't reset every time you start your MyChron. So at some point, that can get a little bit corrupted, and a good old healthy reset can really solve those problems. That particular topic and some of the differences between that IP address and some of those other things is we went over in much greater detail last week, and I think it's already been posted there, but it will also have it in the description box below. That Wi-Fi discussion of AIM Sports Wi-Fi, some important tips and tricks we discussed last week in the previous webinar. So we'll have a link down below. So, and then the track management is another thing that we've chatted little about. I know you get questions about it, and I get questions about it. You have a pretty good example about maybe Daytona and some other spots. Talk a little bit about track management with our devices, and especially the MyChron 5s.
So yeah, let's say you're at Daytona or Charlotte Motor Speedway, or one of the bigger tracks that's going to have multiple tracks, multiple track configurations, all around. So if we were to leave that track management in automatic, it's just going to assume one of those tracks. If you're at Daytona, you got 6 tracks on the MyChron, it's just picking one, may not be the right one. So like Roger mentioned before, fine tuning your track list on the MyChron 5, very helpful to go in there, get the tracks you need and put them on there. That way the MyChron 5 doesn't have to determine between the full road NASCAR course at Daytona versus the flat track, which is a quarter mile down the road. Or maybe you want all those tracks on there, just throw it in manual, pick that track yourself, and you'll be collecting lap times.
Yeah, it's funny, I seen Tice mentions in the chat, a kart on the Daytona. Well, number one, there is a kart track inside of the big oval, but I have been down there, and when they're running karts on
Oh
the
yeah,
full size
yeah.
the full size road course that's there, which
Hmm.
3/4 of the oval is part of that road course. And
Yep.
yeah, it's you get those laydown karts, and and they're on the main track there in the NASCAR banking, right? NASCAR 3 and 4 especially, right there. They are hauling, and and a big old
Uh,
track, right? So
yeah, I believe they were hitting about 144 this past
wow,
year.
and not bad. And because of the automatic, it's just one of those things that most of the time, if you go to your local track and and you're using your AIM device, Micron 5 or others, and in our database we just have the one track, like my local kart track here, Puget Sound Go Kart track. We only have one configuration there on the property, and so when leaving it in automatic, as soon as it sees that we're near that track, it automatically selects it, and everything works fine. What that problem is when you have multiple configurations, like we just chatted about. My process when I go and do data is it's just part of, I'm going to go to the track this weekend. I go onto my AIM device, and this isn't for everybody maybe, but I found it really works well for me. I look at the supplemental notes or whatever that the group is putting out. I know which track we're going to run. It's just one of the steps I do is I clean off all my data, and get everything reset and ready to go. I also take all the tracks off, and I put just that one track on my AIM device.
Mhm.
The automatic may work for you some of the times. Most of the time it's just one more of those things where if you go to the manual mode that we're showing here on the right, and you can actually go in there and leave all the tracks on there, go to manual, go down and say not just the nearest, but I want to actually select Daytona dirt oval, kart oval, or whatever the name of it is, right? So
Yep.
is that how you talk with people to do it when you're talking about it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So like you mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, I do follow MX5, and if you go open up any of their MXL2s right now and go into their track list, you will only see tracks that they're going to be visiting for this season.
Yeah. It's just a good process. It just makes it's one less thing we're always stressed, especially that first time out, right?
Mhm.
First time out on the track at the weekend, and it sure is nice that the car got start finish line coordinates. We don't have to tweak anything afterwards, and we don't have to rush in between practice 1 and practice 2. It just works. So it just a good tip for setting up your devices. Kind of cool. Okay. Anything else to add on that page, or are you ready to move on?
No, no, let's keep it moving.
Okay. The Microns have always had a lot of expansion. I think certainly since the Micron 4 was in place, we've had a Micron expansion box that's been available to them. We still have that now. It's just that it's just getting more and more powerful all the time. Talk a little bit about expansion for those guys that are karters that have a Micron, and some of the stuff that's available to them.
Yeah, yeah. So the expansion is, a peripheral unit you can add on to collect more data points. Things like throttle position, brake, water temps, steering, wheel temps, even a generic 0 to 5 volt sensor. So unlike our automotives where you can, create a custom sensor and, designate numerical values, you can still somewhat do that with the Micron 5s by, using whatever 0 to 5 volt sensor that you would like. Um, you would have to have your calibration table handy. But if it's important data, then that's what you're going to do.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So with the expansion, definitely going to be very helpful for the younger guys, data coaches, guys that are new to the scene, because all that extra data is going to help you take your driving to the next level, because you're going to understand what you're doing on the track a lot better.
A lot of tools available to you, and it's even more amazing that we're able to do all this on the Micron, because it is a product that is virtually configured on board, right, through those 4 buttons. So you start to think about all of this expansion stuff. You're adding sensors in there. Most of them, they kind of recognize what it is, and you get short little pull down lists, and you set up that it's a rear axle speed, right, or a water temperature, or brake pressure. You get some more larger sensors that maybe aren't all that common, and you end up with that generic 0 to 5. Some of that stuff's just not built in there. So you take the voltage and you make the math channel in the software, so it maybe it comes out at 0.5 volts, but you can create that math channel later to tell it that it was a ride height sensor, or something that's a little bit different outside of the normal. It's just part of there is such power in the Micron to have it being able to be configured right on board and be virtually plug and play. But then because of that, you get really super out there on the edges of some pretty cool stuff, and it becomes not quite as powerful that way. But we can always fix it in the software as well. So pretty cool. One of the stories I have is I did go to Daytona. One of my first time I ever worked with a lay down cart on the big road course. The person it was a very early Micron 5 expansion box, and we put 2 ride height sensors right above the bearings on the rear axle. We really wanted to know, when did that long, skinny, road course cart, lay down cart, when did it lift that inside tire, and when did it set it back down on such huge radius corners and such, right? Because anytime that you're turning and that tire is dragging on that solid rear axle, it was just kill the speed. So we were able to go in and plug in a couple of ultrasonic ride height sensors and have the generic 0 to 5 volts, and then able to figure out what they were and exactly when it was releasing the tire and when it was setting it back down, and did all of that with a Micron 5. And within a half a day of testing with this new chassis, we were able to figure out exactly what it wanted, and was making very, very good speed within a very short amount of time. So Micron 5 is pretty powerful.
Yep.
Okay, let's the last thing I think you wanted to chat about was let's show some examples from this past weekend in Florida, what the GPS data looked like with that same data we looked at in just a little bit ago in Race Studio 3. GPS data from a single session. This is a Micron 5 versus a Micron 5s. And then also we'll look at the next slide. We'll have like 4 sessions from each one of those. And let's look at the number of sats and the positional accuracy. What do you see here, Cory?
So what I'm seeing here is a Micron 5s that is much better as far as its GPS qualities go. You're seeing more satellites collected, and you're seeing a much better positional accuracy. Like I mentioned before, I think our expected is at 0.5 meters. This one is down to below 0.3, which is actually less than a foot. So very, very, very clean, very direct GPS signal for that Micron 5s 2T in this session. Number of satellites, you won't see it until the next slide. There are 2 more collected for the Micron 5s, but once we move on to the next one, you'll see that it actually retains those 16 much better. So you'll see with the Micron 5 2T regular right above that, flipping between 12, 13, 14 satellites, which is still good. It's still getting good accuracy, but you can kind of see it's spaced out, spread apart on the graph lines there, whereas the Micron 5s 2T, very tight lines, very clean averages of 16, except for one lap where we were averaging 15. So not only is it finding those satellites more quickly, but also retaining those satellites a little bit better as well. And also with the positional accuracy, you'll see variations with the Micron 5 2T. Still good GPS data, but it's kind of hard to compare to the Micron 5s 2T, which is just consistent straight lines, no peaks or valleys, which is it's what you want.
And another, again, kind of falling back into some more technical thought process on GPS, a lot of people just look at the number of satellites that are being gathered. And it's just kind of interesting here that, especially if we go to that first one where it was just heads up, just 2 more satellites on the GPS 05S. These, by the way, these 2 gauges were on the track at the same exact time, right? We found these data loggers were out there at the same time. It's not even a session that was 30, 40 minutes later. These were on the track at the same time. And the yeah, it's only a couple satellites more, but a ton better on the actual positional accuracy. So it's what you can do with it, and those additional data points at 25 hertz, and just the sensor being newer and greater and later, and and better. This is a factor of what, 8 better on the positional accuracy with only a couple more satellites. It just does better with what it has. So it's a kind of an interesting thing. And this shows the consistency that it did better. This is over the course of 2 different days of these same 2 data loggers being out on the track at the 2 sets at each of these at the same time out on the track. But this is over the course of 2 days. And the way I've set the software up here is not just where I've got the cursor, where it's showing you what the value was, but it also shows the low and the high for that the lap we're looking at, and the average. I think this average showing this is pretty striking to show the average for the entire lap, and probably a better way of comparing the data. So, what anything else you have to add about the GPS data? This happens to be the 4-session one.
No, I think that was going to do it for me.
Perfect. The I see a couple of questions. It looks like somebody's typing an answer, so I'll look back and see if we can add those questions in a minute if they're still there. That's kind of the end of what we wanted to chat about with the MyChron 5 versus the MyChron 5s. Yeah, we focused it on the Micron product, but we also talked about a lot of different products as well that use a lot of the same technology. So it's pretty interesting. This presentation, of course, is being recorded and will go out onto our LearnFast e-training video site on YouTube. We have 152 videos up there, growing all the time with our webinars and some other things that we're doing in the background as well. Cory's been nice enough to join us here to help us create this one. We've got more coming up. Just tons and tons of really good material out there. Go visit out there for some other things. If you have some other information you might want to gather, you go to YouTube. You can just type in you go to our page, and then type in MyChron 5, and you're going to get a list of everything that's where MyChron 5s were mentioned. So pretty decent search functions there on the YouTube page. We're a customer support company that happens to sell racing electronics, as we like to say. Give us a holler. If you don't see us at the track, hopefully you'll see us out there. You'll see Cory, standing there all big and strong. He doesn't do anything at the track all day, but he just stands there like that, right? No,
you'll find me standing just like that.
Just like that all the time. But we have a couple of these Sprinter vans, and they're traveling they're at a racetrack virtually every weekend, somewhere with some of our guys in them, and out there to help you. If you can't find us at the track, or you're at an event that we didn't attend, give us a call, 800-718-9090, and ask some of our techs for support. We're out here to help you. So what is next? What are we going to do at a week from today? What I've wanted to do, and I've wanted to do some profiles, and the next thing that's on our list is some more data analysis stuff. We've been hitting some pretty technical items recently, and I wanted to get back in and do some data analysis. So that's probably the week after this one. But favorite profiles. We've been a lot of them have been playing with Race Studio 3 analysis, and we're starting to find that we're getting comfortable, and we're finding some cool ways to use it. And I have probably gotten 10 to 12 emails, and probably 3 or 4 phone calls. Hey, Roger, I've got Race Studio 3. What hey, can you share some profiles? And they're kind of personalized, and what works for me may not work for you. Or if I'm racing in oval track versus your road racing, you might want a little bit different look or feel, or different channels. But these are going to be some great things to do, is to share some user profiles. I keep calling them user profiles. They're just Race Studio 2 term for us was it was user profiles, and they're called just profiles here. I think we should share some of those and show what we like about what we're doing. I've got a couple of guests already that are going to come in and share theirs. I show down here below for the co-host, maybe you. I would love to chat with some of the folks that are here that come and visit us on these webinars all the time, or watch them later on YouTube. If you've got some favorite profiles that you've created that you're using in Race Studio 3 in the beta version as you're working, love to have you come on. If you don't want to come on, I know some of you are from overseas and maybe don't speak English all that well. No problem there. Send them to me and let me present them, right? And show what some of those look like. I have no problem with that either. But if I would really enjoy having some of those who've been with us at these webinars for the last year to come in and spend 3 or 4 minutes, bring up your profiles and let us click through them and share why it's important to you and what you have found cool about ways that you've built these. I would love to have you give me drop me an email and let's get you set up for next Tuesday and do some of these. If you're listening here, let me know. And but we are going to talk about favorite profiles next week on Tuesday. Look forward to seeing everybody there. We'll have a good time. Yeah. The last thing I like to do is that there's the contact information. Cory's been has worked hard putting this all together. He's there's his email address. Love giving that out. So Cory can be super busy for the next 3 or 4 weeks, right?
Fan mail only, please.
Exactly. There's my email address for anybody that would love to chat with me about their profiles that they've been working with in Race Studio 3. Drop me an email and either join us on the Zoom call and present some of it yourself. If you're not comfortable with that, please chat with me and give me some screen captures of what you're doing so we can kind of show some of the stuff you're doing. And contact Cory with any of your MyChron 5 questions from this conversation here today.
Please do.
Cory, I appreciate you coming and doing this. I know it's a ton of extra work. You and I were chatting up to our bedtimes last night as we were finishing things up and getting ready. So I know it's a lot of work, and all of us appreciate it a lot. Is there anything else you'd like to add as we kind of close this one out today?
No, I had a great time. I appreciate everybody for coming, and obviously, Roger, we thank you for hosting all these, and thanks for letting me come out.
Perfect. They are a good time. We do enjoy them, and as I mentioned earlier, we have updated the list for the live webinars. Most of you that are registered for it should have gotten an email. We're going to do them at least through the end of June, and looking forward to that. Continue to drop me emails. Let me know and I've got a list and I saved those emails of some of you have already done it, but resend them, or those of you that haven't sent me yet, send me an email telling me what topics you think you'd like to have covered. We're doing one of these a week for quite a while. Love to have your topic ideas as well. Thanks everybody for coming. I appreciate it. Look forward to seeing everybody next week, and hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you here this time next week.
Thanks, guys.